Now we are going to study about the understanding verbal analogies. So what is verbal analogies? Verbal analogies are statements that compares two things using logic and reasons. They typically follow the format means A is to B as C is to D, where A and B are related in some ways, C and D are related in the same ways as A and B. Verbal analogies test your ability to recognize relationships between words and concepts. To solve them, you need to know the identify the relationship between A and B and apply that relationship to C and D. Example, for flowers is to be garden, as book is to library. So in this analogy, flower and garden are related to the flower and are often found in gardens. Books and libraries are related in the same way, means books are often found in libraries. Verbal analogies can be used in the various contexts such as critical thinking and problem solving, language and vocabulary building, standardized test and assessment, logic and reasoning exercises. By practicing verbal analogies, you can improve your ability to think critically and make connections between seamlessly and unrelated concepts. So, what do you mean by the See, I'm just giving you the present overview of this verbal analogies. So it is a brief summary of the main points and key information that will be covered in a presentation, and it provides a concise overview of the presentation content, structure, and key takeaways. A good presentation overview should include title and topic, purpose and objective, main points and key message, key data and statistics, visual aids and props, conclusions and call to action. The overview should be the clear and concise, which is easy to understand, free of jargons and technical terms, visually appealing. The purpose of a presentation overview is to grab the audience attention, provide context and the background information, review the main point and key takeaways, set the tone and the pace of the presentation. A well-crafted presentation overview can help engaging the audience, establish credibility, and ensure a successful defining verbal analogy. So, how do you defining the verbal analogy? So, verbal analogies are the logical and linguistic exercise that compares two relationship between words or concepts. They involve identifying the connections between a pair of words and then applying the same relationship to another pair of words. Means that this is a typical format of a verbal analogy is A ratio B ratio C ratio D, means where A and B are related in some ways and C and D are related in some other ways as A and B. So the relationship between the words can be based on the various factors such as meanings, means synonyms and antonyms, etc. Category, means type, classes, etc. Property, attributes, characteristics, functions, uses, purposes, and many more. Associations means connections, relationships, etc. Verbal analogies require critical thinking, problem solving, and linguistic skills to identify the relationship and make connections between words. So, what are the examples of verbal analogies are? Flower is to garden, is to books, is to library. Means you have to connect the word into the another and second statement into the first word. Means doctor is to patient and teacher is to student. Car is to wheel and bike is to pedal. So verbal analogies are used in various contexts, including language learning, cognitive development, standardized test. So what are the terms used in the verbal analogies? Verbal analogies use specific terms to describe the relationship between words. Here I'm just going to discuss you some common terms. So first is synonyms. Word with similar meanings means happy or joyful. Antonyms means words with opposite meanings. For example, hot and cold. Hypernyms means a word that is a category or class for another dog. Words means animals and dog. Hypernyms, a word that is a specific instance of a category or class. For example, dog or animal. Analogues, words that have a similar relationship. For example, ear, eyes and see, ear and hear. So attributes are the characteristics or feature of something. Means apple red. Function, the purpose of use of doing something. For example, pencil and write. Association, a connection or relationship between words. For example, doctor and hospital. Class, the category or group of things means car and vehicle. Property, a characteristics of quality of something. For example, water and liquid. So understanding these terms can help you better comprehend verbal analogies and improve your ability to solve them. Types of verbal analogies. There are several types of verbal analogies, which includes synonyms, analogies, which is based on the similar meanings, for example, happy, joyful, tall. Antonyms, analogies based on the opposite meanings, for example, hot, cold. Category analogies based on the category membership, for example, dog, animal. Attribute analogy, it is based on the attributes or characteristics, for example, apple, red, means grass and green. Function analogy is based on the function or use, for example, pencil, write, brush, teeth. Association analogy is based on the associations or relationships, for example, doctor, hospital, teacher in college. Class analogies based on the class or category memberships, for example, car, vehicle. Property analogies based on the properties or quality, water, liquid, fire, burn. Analogies, analog analogy is based on the analogous relationships, which is I, see, ear, or hear. Logical analogies based on the logical relationships, which is day, night, true or false. So these type of verbal analogies helps develop critical thinking, problem solving, and linguistic skills. So what is the purpose of verbal analogies? Verbal analogies serve several purposes: improve critical thinking, they enhance analytical skills, helping you evaluate relationships and make logical connections. Enhance problem solving. Verbal analogies develop your ability to approach problems from different angles and find creative solutions. Vocabulary building. They expose you to a wide range of words, phrases, concepts, expanding your linguistic knowledge. Cognitive development. Verbal analogies stimulate cognitive growth by challenging your brain to recognize patterns and relationships. Standards test preparations. They also commonly used in assessments like SET, GRE, GMAT to evaluate critical thinking and problem solving skills. Improved communication. By understanding analogies, you can better comprehend complex ideas, new senses of language, and figurative language. Enhance creativity. Verbal analogies encourage you to think outside the box and explore innovative connections between ideas. Development of a logical reasoning. They can help you understand logical relationships and apply them to real life situations. Improved memory concentrations. Solving verbal analogies exercises your brain, improving memory, attention, and focus. Academic and the professional applications. Verbal analogies are useful in various fields such as law, medicines, business, where critical thinking and problem solving are essential. By practicing verbal analogies, you can develop these skills and enhance your overall cognitive abilities. So, definition of verbal analogies are the logical and the linguistic exercises that compare relationship between words and concept, requiring reasons and problem solving skills to identify the connection. They involve identify the relationship between two words or concept, means A ratio B, applying that relationship to another pair of words or concept, ratio C ratio D. So analogy is typically presented in the format A ratio B semicolon C ratio D. So where A and B are is related to the some way and C and D are related in another way as A and B. So verbal analogies test your ability to recognize relationship between words and concept, understand linguistic and logical connections, apply reasoning and problem solving skills, think creativity and make connections between seamlessly unrelated ideas. Verbal analogies are used in the various contexts, including education, cognitive development, and standardized tests to assess critical thinking, problem solving, and linguistic skills. So, what do you understand by importance? So, important of verbal analogies are the important of several reasons. Improve critical thinking, they enhance analytical skills, helping you evaluate relationships and make logical connections. Enhance problem solving. Verbal analogies develop your ability to approach problems from different angles and find creative solutions. Better communication, understand analogies to improve comprehensions of complex ideas, nuances of language, figurative language. Cognitive development is the verbal analogy simulates cognitive growth, improving memory, attention, and concentration. Academic success, they are useful in various subjects such as languages, are logical, and the critical thinking. Professional applications, verbal analogies are valuable in fields like law, medicines, business, where critical thinking and problem solving are essentials. Standardized test preparations, they are commonly used in the assessments like SAT, GRE, GMAT to evaluate critical thinking and problem solving skills. Enhance creativity. Verbal analogies encourage thinking outside the box and exploring innovative connections between ideas. Improved vocabulary. They expose you to a wide range of word, phrases, and concepts, expanding your linguistic knowledge. Developing logical reasons. Verbal analogies help you understand logical relationships and apply them to real life situations. By practicing verbal analogies, you can develop these skills and academic professions and having the personal successes. So, what do you mean by definition of verbal analogies? Definitions of verbal analogies are the form of logical reasonings that involves identifying relationships between words, concepts, and ideas. They are a way of thinking that helps us understand how things are connected and how we can use those connections to solve problems, make decisions, and communicate effectively. Verbal analogies typically involve four elements: A, the first term; B, the second term; C, the second term, third term, and D is the fourth term. The relationship between A and B is compared to the relationship between C and D. The goal is to identify the connections between the two pairs of words or concepts. Verbal analogies can be used to develop critical thinking and problem skills, improve vocabulary and language skills, It also enhances logical reasons and analytical skills also. Prepare for standardized test and assessment. Improve communications and interpersonal skills. Verbal analogies are a powerful tool for building cognitive skills and can be applied in various areas of life, including education, career development, and personal growth. So, what do you understand by the importance of verbal analogy? See, I just discussed you uh, above that verbal analogies are having different and important ways to improve critical thinking. See, when you have the critical thinking and when you improve critical thinking by develop your critical the analytical skills, evaluating relationships and logics. It also enhances problem solvings that encourage creative solutions and approaching problem from different angles. It boosts vocabulary. See, it's exposed you to various words, phrases, and concepts, expanding linguistic knowledge. It's developed logical reasonings to help understand logical relationships and apply them to real life situations. It also enhances communications, improve comprehensions of complex idea and figurative languages. Prepare for standardized tests, appear in assessments like SET, GRE, GMAT, evaluating critical thinking and problem solving skills. Its benefit academic and professional field, which is useful in law, medicines, business, and educations where critical thinking and problem solving are essential. Improve cognitive skills, enhance memory, attention, concentration through regular practices. It's promote critical thinking to encourage exploring innovative connections between ideas. It's develop essential life skills to improve decision-making analysis, effective communications. So by practicing verbal analogies, you can enhance your cognitive abilities, improve academic and professional performance, and develop valuable life skills. So what do you mean by creative thinking? See, creative thinking is the ability to generate innovative ideas, solutions, product by thinking outside the box, making connections between seamlessly and unrelated concepts and exploring new possibilities. It involves imaginations. It's generating new ideas and mental images. Divergent thinking. See, exploring multiple possibilities and perspectives. Convergence means combining disparate ideas to form a new whole. Flexibility, adapting and adjusting ideas based on the feedback and constraints. Originality, producing unique and novel situations. Risk taking, embracing uncertainty and experimentations, curiosity, seeking out new knowledge and experiences. Open mind, considering diverse perspectives and the ideas. Creative thinking is essential for innovations which develop new products, services, and processes, problem solving, finding novel solutions to complex challenges, artistic expressions, which creating music, art, literature, or any other creative works. Personal growth, it's discovering new passions and interests. Business success is staying ahead of the competitions and driving growth. By cultivating creating thinking, you can also unlock new possibilities, achieve success, and make a meaningful impact in the various aspects of life. Critical thinking. See, critical thinking is the systematic evaluation and analysis of informations and ideas to form a judgment or decisions. It involves objectify separating facts from the biases and emotions. Analysis. It's breaking down complex information into the smaller parts. Evaluations. It's assessing the credibility and the relevance of information. Inference. Drawing logical conclusions based on the evidence. Creativity. It's generating alternative solution and perspectives. Evidence-based reasonings. It's supposed supporting arguments with facts and data. Awareness of biases, recognizing, addressing with the personal biases. Open mindedness, considering the diverse perspectives and ideas. So, critical thinking is the essential for the effective problem solving, informed decision making, personal growth and development, academic and professional success, critical evaluation of information and media, improved communication collaborations, enhanced adaptability and resilience, better judgment and decision making in personal and professional life. So, by developing critical thinking skills, you can make more informed decisions, solve complex problems, and achieve greater success in various aspects of life. So, what do you mean by effective communication? Effective communication is the process of conveying informations, ideas, messages in a clear and concise, understandable manner, ensuring that the intent audience receives and interprets message accurately. So it involves clear articulations of thoughts and ideas, active listening and feedback, appropriate choice of communication channel, verbal, written, and visuals, considerations of audience, context, and purpose, awareness of non-verbal communications, which is body language and tone, empathy and understanding of different perspectives, avoidance of barrier, jargons, biases, and distractions, confirmations of understanding and clarifications. So, effective communication is essential for the building strong relationships, avoiding misunderstanding and conflict, collaboration and teamwork, personal and professional growth, success in business, education, and personal life, resolving issues and finding solutions, resolving and establishing trust and credibility. It also enhances reputations and influence. So, by developing effective communication skills, you can improve relationships, achieve greater success, and overcome communications barriers. So, what are the terms used in the verbal analogies and their relationships? So, here I'm just going to discuss you some used in the verbal technologies. What are the terms which we are using along with their relationships? So, first is synonyms. Synonyms are the words with the similar meanings. For example, happy and joyful. Then antonyms, words with opposite meanings. For example, hot and cold. Hypernyms means a word that is a category or class for another word. For example, animal and dog. Hyponyms means a word that is the specific intent of a category of a class. For example, dog and animal. Analog, world that have a similar relationships means eye, see, ear, and hear. Attributes are characteristics or features of some things means apple and red. Functions, the purpose or the use of doing something means pencil and write. Associations are connections or relationship between words, for example, doctor and hospital. Class, a category or group of things, for example, car and vehicle. Property, a characteristics or quality of something which is liquid or water. So these terms helps describe the relationship between words and verbal analogies which are used to develop critical thinking, problem solving, and linguistic skills. So, what do you mean by these synonyms, which are the words that have the same or nearly the same meanings as other words? They are words that can be used interchangeably in a particular context to convey same idea or concept. For example, happy, joyful, cheerful, jubilant. Big is to large, is to huge, is to enormous. Run is to sprint, is to race, is to dash. Using synonyms can help enhance vocabulary, improve writing and communication skills, add variety to language use, avoid repetitions, convey subtitle differences in meaning. So synonyms can be exact, happy and joyful, near, big and large. And well, I'm talking about the context and the dependent. For example, bank is to financial institution. So synonyms are essential in the verbal analogies as they help identify relationships between words and ideas. So what do you mean by the antonyms? See, antonyms are words that have opposite meanings and they are words that contrast with each other, highlighting their differences. For example, hot, cold, light, dark, happy, sad, fast, slow, big, small. So antonyms can be credible, for example, hot, warm, cold, complementary, alive, dead, relations, husband, wife, semitic, opposites, yes or no. Using antonyms can help clarify meanings, highlight contrast, enhance vocabulary, improve writing and communication skills, develop critical thinking. Antonyms are the essentials in verbal analogies as they help to identify relationship between words and ideas and can be used to solve analogies like hot, cold is to right. For example, answer we will going to through that hot is cold and light is dark. So understanding antonyms, you can better understand language, can develop your critical thinking more. So what is analogous? So analogous refers to the relationship between words or concepts that are similar in nature, functions or characters but not identical. So analogs words or concepts share common attributes, features or properties that make them comparable but they may not be identical in meaning or scope. In verbal analogs, relationships are used to identify connections between words or concepts such as I, see, ear, and hear. In this, the relationship between I and see is analog to the relationship between ear and hear. Both relationships involve a sensory organ and the sense it provides. Analogs relationships can use to identify patterns and connections between words and concepts, make interference, draw and conclusions, solve problem and complete analog, develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. By recognizing analogs relationships, you can better understand the connections between words and concept and improve your ability to think critically and solve problems. What do you mean by analogy? Analogy is a comparison between two things that may seem different on the surface but share common characteristics, attributes, or relationships. Analogies help identify similarities and connections between concept, idea, object, and are used to see explain complex idea in similar terms, identify patterns and relationships, make informed decisions, solve problem and complete analogies, develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. So analogies typically follows a specific structure which is A is to B double ratio C ratio T. So where I told you before, A and B share a relationship, as C and D share a similar relationships. For example, I is to C ratios ear and hear. In this analogy, I and C share our relationships. The eye allow us to see, as ear and hear shares a similar relationships. The ear allow us to hear. So by recognizing analogies, you can develop your ability to think critically, make connections between seamlessly disparate ideas and complex problems. So what do you mean by antonyms? See, antonyms refers to a word that is opposite in meanings to another word. For example, hot. Antonyms cold, happy. Antonyms: said, fast, antonyms: slow, big, antonyms: small. So antonyms are used to highlight contrast and opposite and can be used to clarify meaning, emphasize differences, add nuisance to language, create contrast and interest in writing and in speech. Develop critical thinking and vocabulary skills. There are different types of antonyms, including gradable antonyms, hot, cold, complementary antonyms, which is alive and dead, relational antonyms, for example, husband and wife, semitic opposites means yes or no. So, understanding antonyms can improve and help in language skills, critical thinking, and problem solving ability. So, what is synonyms refers to? It refers to a word that has the same or nearly the same meaning as another word. For example, happy. Synonyms is joyful, cheerful, and jubilant. Big. Synonyms is large, huge, and enormous. Run. Synonyms is sprint, race, and dash. Synonyms are used to add variety of languages, avoid repetitions, enhance writing and communication skills, convey subtitles, difference in meanings, develop vocabulary and linguistic skills. So there are some different types of synonyms, including exact synonyms, which is happy and joyful, near synonyms, which is big and large, context developed, and the dependent synonyms, which is bank and financial institutions. Using synonyms can help improve language skills. Writing and communication can also help to clarify meanings, add precisions to language, enhance style and tone, develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. So, what do you mean by part to whole? See, part to whole is a relationship between a component and the larger entity it belongs to. It is a fundamental concept in analogies where a part is connected to its whole, like finger and hand, leaf, tree, brick and building, note, song. So in each example, the first word is finger, leaf, brick, note is a part, and the second word, hand, tree, building, songs is a whole. So this relationship is essential in analogies as it helps identify connections between individuals, concept, and their larger context. By recognizing part to whole relationships, you can better understand how individual elements contribute to a larger system or structure. So definition of part to whole analogy. A part to whole analogy is a different type of analogy that creates and relates to the components, entity, and it belongs to the whole. And it is a relationship between the smaller elements and the larger systems or structure it is a part of. In a part of whole, there is a relationship between the part of whole is to use to make connections and draw parallel difference between the different concept, ideas, or object. The structure of a part to whole analogy is typically part whole is to part whole. For example, finger, hand, leaf, tree. In this example, finger is a part of hand and the leaf is a part of tree. The analogy highlights the relationships between the individual components, fingers and leaves, and their respective wholes, hand and tree. Part to whole analogies are useful for identify relationships between individual components and larger system, understanding how parts contribute to the whole, making connections between different concepts and ideas, developing critical thinking and problem solving skills. So here I am just going to discuss you some example of part to whole analogy, which is finger, hand, toe, foot. Leaf is to tree, is to branch, is to tree. Note is to song, and word is to sentence. Brick is to building, and cell is to organisms. Wheel is to car, and propeller is airplane. Frame is to picture, and border is to country. Key is to keyboard, and paddle is to bicycle. Slice is to pizza, and piece is to cake. Page is to book, and scene is to play. Thread is the fabric, and note is to music. So in each of these examples, the relationship between the part and the whole is highlighted, showing how individual components, fingers, leaves, notes, etc., are connected to the large entities, hand, trees, songs, etc. So these analogies can help develop critical thinking, problem solving skills, and vocabulary, as well as improve understanding of relationships between individuals, components, and larger systems. Now we are going to study about the whole to part. We just studied part to whole. Now we will going to study about whole to part. So whole to part means is a type of analogy that relates a larger entity, means the whole, to one of its component, the part. It is a reverse of a part to whole analogy. In a whole to part analogy, the relationship between the whole and the part is used to make connections and draw parallel between different concepts, ideas, or objects. The structure of a whole to part analogy is typically whole part is and whole is to part. For example, tree, leaf, and car to wheel. So in each example, tree is the whole and leaf is one of its parts. Similarly, car is whole and wheel is one of its parts. So whole to part analogies are useful for identify relationships between larger system and their individual components. Understanding how the whole is comprised of its parts. Making connections between different concepts and ideas. Developing critical thinking and problem solving skills. Let me know if you have to see some more examples. Definitions of whole to part analogy. A whole to part analogy is a type of analogy that relates a larger entity system or concept, the whole, to one of its smaller components, parts, or elements, means the part. This type of analogy highlights the relationship between the larger context and one of an individual components, showing how whole is comprised of its part. In a whole to part analogy, the whole is the broader, more general concept, while the part is the narrower, more specific components. This analogy helps to identify the relationship between a larger system and its individual components. Understand how the whole is made up of its part. Make connections between different concepts and ideas. Develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. The structure of a whole to part analogy is typically whole, part, and whole part. For example, country, city, company, and department. In this example, country is the whole and city is one of its parts. Similarity, company is the whole and department is one of its part. So example of whole to part analogy is orchestra, violin, team, player. Library is to book and university is to department. Country is to province and company is to division. Body is to organ and car is to engine. City is to neighborhood, tree is to branch. School is to classroom, hospital is to ward. Ocean is to wave and army is to regiment. University is to faculty and corporation is to department. Garden is to flower and orchestra is the musicians. City is to district and organization is to team. So in each example, the whole orchestra, library, country, etc. is related one of its parts, violin, books, and province, etc. So these analogies highlights the relationship between the larger entity and its individual component. Whole to part analogies are used for understanding how individuals' part contribute to the larger whole and making connections between different concepts and ideas. Now go to the action to object. So what do you understand by action to object? See, in this, it is a type of analogy that relates an action or verb to the object that is affected by the action. In this type of analogy, the relationship between the action and the object is highlighted, showing how action is directed towards the object. The structure of an action object analogy is typically means action to object and action to object. For example, paint canvas, write paper. Run is to track and drive is to road. Eat is to food and read is to book. Play is to instrument and sing is to microphone. So in each examples, the action paint, rain, run, eat, etc. is related to the object is affected by its action. Canvas, track, food, etc. Action to object analogies are useful to understand the relationship between the actions and the object that are involved in those actions. So, what is the definition of action to object? An action to object analogy is a type of analogy that relates a verbs or action to the object that is affected by the action. It highlights the relationship between the action and the object, which showing how the action is directed towards the object. So in this type of analogy, the action is the verb or verb phrase and the object is the noun that receives the action. The analogy helps to identify the relationship between the action and the object and how the object is affected by the action. The action to object analogy is useful tool for understanding the relationships between action and object, identifying the object that is affected by an action, developing critical thinking and problem solving skills with improving vocabulary and language skills. So by recognizing the relationship between action and object, you can better understand how action affect object and how objects are impacted by actions. For example, of action to object analogies are cook is to recipe and build is to blueprint. Type is to keyboard and play is to guitar. Plant is to seed and write is to journal. Read is to book and write is to journal. Run marathons and is to swim is to lab. Dance is to floor and sing is to microphone. Drive is to car and ride is to bike. Cut is to scissor and glue is to paste. Teach is to student and coach is to team. Design is to software, build is to house. So in each example, the action cook, type, plant, etc. is related to the object that is affected by that action, recipe, keyboard, seeds, etc. So these analogies can help you develop your critical thinking skills, improving your vocabulary, and better understand the relationship between action and object. Let me know if you had like to see more examples. Object to action. See, we learn about action to object. Now we will learn object to action. So object to action is a type of analogies that related an object to action that is typically performed or with that object. So for example, in this type of analogy, the object is the noun and the action is the verb or verb phrase that is associated with the object. The structure of an object to action analogy is typically object is to action and object is to option action. For example, book is to read and letter is to write. Piano is to play, guitar is to strum. Car is to drive, bike is to ride. Food is to eat and drink is to sip. Painting is to create and sculptures is to create. So in each examples, the object books, piano, car, etc. is related to the action that is typically performed on or with that object, means read, play, and drive, etc. Object to action analogies are useful for understanding the relationships between objectives and action that are associated with them. Object to action analogy. See, here are some more examples. Object to action analogies are, which is flower is to water and lawn is to mow. Picture is to hang and frame is to assemble. Phone is to dial and computer is to type. Bike is to pedal and boat is to sail. Guitar is to tune and violin is to bow. Cake is to bake and cookies is to decorate. House is to build and furniture is to assemble. Poem is to recite and song is to sing. Map is to fold and globe is to rotate. Data is to analyze and report is to write. So in each example, the object, flower, picture, phone, etc. is related to the action that is typically performed on or with that object, water, hang, dial, etc. Object to the actions analogies can help you develop your critical thinking skills, improve your vocabulary, and better understand the relationships between the object and the action. Let me know if you have to like see more examples. So I have some more examples of object to action analogies. That brush is to paint and crystals is to crave. Needle is to sew and pencil is to draw. Ball is to throw and hoop is to jump. Book is to read and article is to write. Guitar is to play and drums is to beat. Cake is to forest and cookies is to decorate. House is to build and bridge is to construct. Flower is to plant and tree is to prune. Phone is to call and email is to send. Map is to navigate and compass is to orient. So in each example, the object, brush, needle, ball, etc. is related to the action that is typically performed with that object, paint, sew, through, etc. So these analogies can help you develop your critical thinking skills, improve your vocabulary, and can better the relationship between objects and action. So what are the types of verbal analogies? Types of verbal analogies are including synonyms, which is similar meanings, happy, joyful, and is to big is to large. Antonyms, which is having the opposite meanings, which is hot, cold, and light is to dark. Part to whole, which is finger and hand, and leaves is to tree. Whole to part, tree is to leaf, and car is to wheel. Object to action, book is to read, and phone is to call. Action to object means write is to pen, and paint is to brush. Cause and effect, rain is to flood, and fire is to burn. Associations related idea, doctor is to hospital and teacher is to school. Classifications category, lion is the mammal and car is to vehicle. Analogies of analogy abstract, eye is to see and ear is to hear. So verbal analogies helps develops critical thinkings, problem solving skills, vocabulary. They are used in various fields like education, psychology, and artificial intelligence. So what do you mean by opposite analogy? Opposite analogy is a type of analogy that relates two concepts of words that are opposite in meanings, also known as antonyms analogies. They follow the structure like word is to antonyms and word is to antonyms. For example, hot, cold, and light is to dark. Big is to small and fast is to slow. Happy is to sad and clean is to dirty. So in each example, the first word is paired with its antonyms, a word with the opposite meanings, and the second word is paired with its antonyms. Opposite analogies are useful for developing vocabulary and understanding word meanings. It's improving critical thinking and problem solving skills. It enhancing language skills and communications. It's preparing for various cognitive abilities tests and assessment. What do you mean by part to whole analogy? Part to whole analogies are a type of analogy that relates a part of components to the larger whole systems. They follow the structure which is part is to whole and part is to whole. For example, wheel is to car and blade is to fan. Finger is to hand and leaf is to tree. Brick is to wall and note is to song. So in each example, the first part, wheel, finger, and brick is related to the large whole and car hand walls. The second part is the blade, leaf, note is related to the its larger whole, fan, tree, and songs. Part two whole analogies helps develop understanding of relationships between components and systems. Critical thinking and problem solving skills, having the ability to identify patterns and connections, vocabulary and language learning skills. Let me know if you have to see more examples. What do you mean by cause and effect analogy? So cause and effect analogies are a type of analogy that relates a cause or to its effects or an action to its consequences. They follow the structure which is cause, and effect. For example, rain is to flood and earthquake is to landslide. Fire is to burn and ice is to freeze. Exercise is to strength and study is to knowledge. So in each example, the first cause, rain, fire, exercise, leads to the first effect, flood, burn, or strength. And the second cause, earthquake, ice, and study, leads to the second effect, which is landslides, freeze, and knowledge. So cause and effect analogies helps develop understanding of relationships between action and consequences. Critical thinking and problem solving skills, ability to predict outcomes and make informed decisions. Vocabulary and language skills. Let me know if you want to see more example of this critical and cause. So what do you mean by synonyms analogy, which I discussed you earlier? Synonyms analogies are a type of analogy that relates a similar meanings. They follow the structure like words is to synonyms and word is to synonyms. For example, happy is to joyful and big is to large. Fast is to quick and cold is to frosty. Smart is to intelligent and beautiful is to gorgeous. In each example, the first word is paired with its synonyms, a word with a similar meaning, and the second word is paired with its synonyms. So synonyms, analogies develops vocabularies and understanding of word meanings, critical thinking, problem solving skills, ability to recognize relationship between words and language skills and communications. So what is the simple analogies? What do you mean by simple analogies? Simple analogies are the, for example, cat, kitten, and dog and puppy. Sun is to day and moon is to night. Pen is to write and brush is to paint. Car is to drive and bike is to ride. Book is to read and movie is to watch. Apple is to eat and guitar is to play. House is to live and tree is to grow. Pencil is to draw and singer is to sing. Foot is to walk and hand is to hold. Flower is to bloom and bird is to fly. So simple analogies like these helps develop critical thinking and problem solving skills can be used for improving vocabularies and language skills. So what do you mean by complex analogies? Complex analogies are, for example, scientist is to laboratory and artist is to studio. Composer is to symphony and author is to novel. Architect is to blueprint and engineer is to design. Doctor is to diagnosis and detective is to investigation. Poet is to metaphor and mathematics is equation. Conductor is to orchestra and coach is to team. Chef is to recipe and programmer is to algorithms. As anthropologist is to culture and astronomer is to galaxy. Economist is the market and environmentalist is the ecosystem. Historian is the timeline and geologist is the fossil. So complex analogies like these require a deeper understanding of relationships and concept and can help develop advanced critical thinking and problem solving skills. So what is the definition of complex analogies? Complex analogies are analogies that involves abstract concept or relationships. It's require a deeper understanding of underlying principles or mechanisms and having multiple layer of dimensions involves nuisance or subtitle connections between the concept. May requires reasons and analogy, metaphor or abstractions. Often involves domain specific knowledge or expertise. May have multiple possible solutions or interpretations. It's require critical thinking, analysis, and problem solving skills to solve. So, complex analogies are used to develop and test advanced critical thinking skills, problem solving abilities, and domain specific knowledge. So they are often used in various fields such as educations, for example, graduate school entrance exams, psychology, which is cognitive ability test, business, which is leadership developing programs, science and research, which is scientific problem solving, artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is analogical reasonings. Examples of complex analogies are have some example of complex analogies, which is architect, which is building, is to software engineer, is to algorithms. Ecosystem is to biodiversities and economy is to market diversity. Historical event is to context and scientific theory is to paradigms. Literary movement is to author and artistic style is to painter. Music composition is to harmony and poetic forms is to meter. Neurologic system is to brain function and computational network is to data processing. Physiological concept is to ethical implications, and scientific principle is to the technical application. Political ideology is to social structure, religious belief is to moral code. So psychological disorder is to the cognitive biases, and physical disease is to biological mechanisms. Sociological phenomenon is to the cultural norm, and economic indicator is the market trend. These complex analogies requires a deep understanding to the relationship between concept, abstract thinking, and the ability to recognizing patterns and connections across different domains. Let me know if you want to like more examples. So, what do you mean by sequentials analogies? Sequentials analogies are a type of analogy that involves a sequence of event, process, or steps. They require understanding the relationships between these steps and recognizing patterns or connections between them. Here are some examples. For example, seed is to sprout, plant, and eggs is to chicks is to chicken. Water is to ice is to steam, and heat is to melt into boil. Letter is word into sentence, and note is to chord is to song. Cells is to tissue is to organ, and atom is the molecule is to compound. Draft is to revisions is to final, and sketch is to painting, and is to masterpiece. Bird is to bloom is to wit, caterpillar is to cocoon is to butterfly. Foundation, frame, and building, idea, outline, story. Root, root is stem, leaf, and foundation is structure, bridge. Input, process, output, and data analysis, conclusion. So sequential analogies helps develop critical thinking skills, problem solving abilities, and understanding of processes and relationships. What is the relationship between the term in verbal analogies? In verbal analogies, the relationship between terms and can be various, including by synonymously means similar meanings, antonymy means opposite meanings, hyponymy, which is specific to journal, hypernymy means journal to specific, meronymy is a part of whole, holonymity, which is whole to part, cultural relationships, which is rain is to flood, analogical relationship is to eye is to ear and hear is to hear, associative relationships, doctor is to hospital, classification is to category, like line is to manual. So understanding these relationships is crucial for solving verbal analogies as they help identify the connections between terms and apply it to the analogy. So let me know if you want more questions about this. So this is the activity which you have to perform. What is synonyms, antonyms, part of words, and etc. You have to follow these things. At last, I just want to conclude. In conclusions, analogies are a powerful tool for developing critical thinking, problem solving vocabulary skills. They help us understand relationship between the concept, recognizing patterns, and make connections across building domains. Verbal analogies in particular require a deeper understanding of language, semantics, and relationships between word and concept. By practicing analogies, you can improve your ability to think critically and logically, solve problems and make connections, understand complex relationships and concepts, enhance your vocabulary and language skills, develop your analytical and cognitive abilities. Remember, analogies are a skills that can be developed with practice and patience. Keep practicing and you will become a master of analogical reasoning. If you have any more questions or need help with anything else, free feel to ask. Thank you.